The further improved version of Toyota's 4th generation J150 series Land Cruiser, launched in 2018, is the preferred mode of transport in some of the world's harshest environments. So it's a safe bet that it'll be up to pretty much anything you could put it through. It's not cheap, but it is tough, dependable, will hold its value and probably outlast you. Even better off-road and slightly better on it, this revised version's safer, smarter and a little easier to live with, but remains as honest a large, luxurious 7-seater SUV as you could want.
In an age of crossovers, soft roaders and various other permutations of pretend SUVs, it's refreshing once in a while to come across the real thing. And this is it, Toyota's Land Cruiser. The Land Cruiser model line goes back nearly 70 years to the BJ series model, a Willys Jeep-like design introduced by Toyota in 1951 and used by the military in the Korean War. In 1955, this vehicle was renamed the Land Cruiser and marketed to private buyers looking for rugged, go-anywhere transport. A more car-like station wagon version arrived in 1966, but the key change in this model line's history came in 1985, when two separate Land Cruiser product lines were introduced. One super large design in our market, variously badged VX, Amazon and V8, campaigned in luxury Range Rover territory. The more affordable alternative was what Toyota called its light duty series model, which targeted family orientated SUV rivals that were merely large, models like Mitsubishi Shogun and the Land Rover Discovery. Now, the car we're looking at here is from that more accessible Land Cruiser Light Duty Series bloodline, and it's badged the Prado in quite a few of the 190 countries in which it's sold around the world. Since the mid-80s, we've had J70, J90 and J120 series light duty Land Cruisers before this current 4th generation J150 design arrived in 2009. It was available in our market only with 3-litre 4-cylinder diesel power. In 2014, Toyota's importers decided to stop selling the bigger alternative V8 full luxury class Land Cruiser model in the UK, and so they pushed this light duty series design a bit more upmarket with a facelift and an interior upgrade. Then in 2015, the 3-litre diesel engine made way for the slightly more efficient 2.8-litre unit that this SUV uses now. And finally, in early 2018, we got the further enhanced version of this Mark IV model that we're testing today, with its smarter looks, stronger standards of safety and interior improvements. As before, around the world, typical owners of this car could be anyone from a Kenyan safari guide to a Siberian mining contractor, and it's these people, rather than green-wedded housewives, that the rejuvenated Land Cruiser has been primarily created to suit. Hence its continued use of the kind of separate traditional ladder-framed chassis and live rear axle setup that more car-like European rivals long ago abandoned in search of tighter tarmac performance. Now that limits this big Toyota's market appeal, of course, but loyal customers won't care. They buy this car because it's tough, spacious, it'll go anywhere, and it'll probably outlive them. Could you justify one? Would you want to? Let's find out. You'll be expecting us to tell you that this Land Cruiser is a mightily effective tool off-road, and it is, and we'll get to that. To start with, though, the most pressing issue lies with the paved surface compromises that you'll have to make in order to be able to play Crocodile Dundee at the weekends. Your feelings on this will depend on previous experience and expectation. If you've frequently driven more car-like large SUVs, the way that this Toyota lurches about through the bends will feel, well, disappointingly dated, but of course it would be, given that this car rides on the kind of tough ladder-framed chassis that most rivals have long ago discarded. Take this into account, adjust to a more leisurely pace, and a Land Cruiser might easily serve as a very pleasant day-to-day driver, providing you can shoulder the higher-than-average running costs. You're never going to be going especially quickly in this car anyway, because it weighs nearly 2.5 tons, which is a lot of weight to be shunted along by a diesel engine with just 4 cylinders, especially one that puts out just 177 HP. Now, Toyota says that this D4D unit has been tuned for torque rather than for total output. There's 420 newton meters of pulling power with a manual gearbox, or 450 newton meters if you go for the automatic version that most customers choose. That's a transmission that's limited to just 6 speeds. The Auto model's 12.7 second rest to 62 miles an hour time is just 0.6 of a second slower than you'd manage in a manual variant, and either way, the top speed is limited to 108 miles an hour by the barn door aerodynamics. If you're looking for reasons to be forgiving of this Toyota's dynamic limitations, then the 3-ton brake towing capacity might be one, although a diesel Discovery betters that by 0.5 ton. Another could well be the commanding driving position. If you would classify the driving position as something like a RAV4 as being high up, then a seat here behind this Land Cruiser steering wheel will make you feel like you're in the umpire's chair at Wimbledon. It's a place of high command from which you marshal an almost bewildering selection of knobs, buttons and screens and switches that can collectively combine either to ease your urban commute or drag you through a parched earth ravine in Death Valley, whichever is most appropriate. Now, assuming that the former scenario is a more common one, this car impresses with reasonably accurate response from the variable flow control power steering, really great all-round visibility and reassuring brakes. Refinement, that's also surprisingly good, thanks to an acoustic windscreen and copious use of insulating materials. The ride's actually very good too, or at least it is on this top Invincible variant with its electronically modulated rear air suspension, which is there to address the rather unsettled low-speed ride you get on the lower range models. Now, this offers 3 heights, normal, high or low, which you might want to manually select. Let's say the low setting to help passengers get in, or the high mode for a gnarly off-road trail. On the move on tarmac, you'll want to leave the speed-sensitive control to select the most appropriate setting for you based on the speed you're going. There is also auto leveling that adjusts the suspension to suit the load that you're carrying. On top of the air-sprung damping, this top model also gets a couple of other desirable additions. First up is the AVS, Adaptive Variable Suspension System. Now, that can adjust the ride you get to suit the road you're on and the mood you're in. It works through a drive mode select system, which via Eco, Comfort, Normal, Sport S and Sport S Plus driving modes also adjust the steering feel, the gear shift timings and the throttle response. Almost as significant, though, is the effect that the high-tech KDSS, Kinetic Dynamic Suspension System, can make. Now, this is one of those active anti-roll setups with active anti-roll bars that limit pitch not only from left to right, but also from front to rear. Now, that obviously helps through the turns, but cornering body roll must still be allowed for in advance, in much the same way as you have to really carefully plan overtaking manoeuvres to take account of the prodigious weight. And off-road, well, where do we start? As long as you can afford the priciest version, it's everything a Land Rover Discovery is, and then some. There's a proper range of off-road stats that most competitors can only wonder at. For the 5-door version of this car, these include an approach angle of 31 degrees, a departure angle of at least 26 degrees, and a ramp breakover angle of 22 degrees. You can drive this Land Cruiser at a scary maximum bank angle of up to 42 degrees, and at a maximum forward or reverse pitch angle of 40 degrees too. And you can wade through water up to 700 millimeters deep. Now, Discovery does offer you slightly more ride height and wading depth, but this Toyota just seems a tougher overall proposition, and you'd be more comfortable subjecting it to that sort of treatment. All models get a permanent 4-wheel drive system, of course, with high and low range gearboxes that you swap between via this control dial located along with the centre differential locking switches on the centre console. Using these switches in combination lets the driver choose various off-road drive combinations. H4F and H4L are high ratio gearbox modes with the centre differential either free or locked. For gnarlier low ratio gearbox progress, the same applies for the alternative L4L L4F and L4L settings. As usual with a Land Cruiser, a Torsen limited slip differential is also fitted, and that's able, as required, to apportion torque between the front and rear axles. In normal conditions, torque is split 40-60 front to rear, but the limited slip diff can automatically vary the ratio from 50-50 to approximately 30-70 in order to achieve the optimum distribution in any given driving situation. Those axles offer astonishing levels of articulation, allowing wheels to drop into huge ruts and dips. The underside of the vehicle has even been engineered so if you do get beyond the 215mm ground clearance and ground out, it'll slide over the surface rather than grind through it. And an ATRC active traction control system uses brake and engine control to maintain traction when you're pulling away on low grip surfaces. There's even clever sat-nav capability that can help you if you get lost in a field. It'll show you a fairy story style trail of where you've been so you can find your way home. Even more capabilities possible if you can stretch to a Land Cruiser model that's fitted with the additional package of features, including what Toyota calls its off-road pack, which is standard on an Invincible variant like this one and optional at the Icon trim level. Now that kinetic dynamic suspension system I just mentioned is one of those. The setup's designed to work in reverse off-road to offer maximum body movement and therefore to maximise grip. The off-road pack also includes an improved lockable rear differential. That's now with a 34% increase in torque capacity, and that's something that'll help you out if you're really stuck. Not that there's any excuse for getting stuck if you make proper use of the pack's multi-terrain select system, which can adjust the four-wheel drive dynamics to suit different types of terrain. There are now 5 different modes to choose from: mud and sand, loose rock, mogul, rock and dirt, and rock. Toyota's also added in a set and forget auto setting, which will make all the decisions for you. The pack also gives you a crawl control system, which enables your car to pick its way along at speeds of up to 3 miles an hour over almost any terrain you care to throw at it. All you need to do is steer. This replaces the more conventional hill start control and downhill assist control features which are fitted to the lower range Land Cruiser models. Now, if you do have a top Land Cruiser variant with that off-road pack fitted, if you're travelling off-piste, you won't even have to get out and inspect what you may be about to hit, thanks to 4 external cameras which feed pictures back to the fascia's central display screen here. They work underwater too. Should you lose track off-road of which way the wheels are pointing, and that's easy to do in glutinous mud, a screen in the instrument binnacle will show you via a tyre angle display, and also the same display takes care of body angle and off-road traction monitoring. In short, thanks to all those little additional features, that off-road pack is nice to have, but it merely embellishes the rugged core fundamentals that remain as strong as they've been since the mid-50s, when Toyota had the original BJ version of this model tackle Mount Fuji. It climbed higher than any vehicle ever had before it, and a legend was born. Toyota's model eases you smoothly over terrain you'd struggle to walk across, let alone glide through, with Radio 4 soothing you on the stereo. And that means that if you like the thought of commuting to Knightsbridge via Ben Nevis, a Land Cruiser remains a difficult proposition to ignore. In a world of stylised luxury SUVs, there's something about this Land Cruiser's bluff-fronted suitability for purpose that's rather refreshing, if you like that sort of thing. Now, with other cars, aesthetic changes to existing models are all about making them appear smarter. When Toyota changes the look of the Land Cruiser, the updates are all about making it even better off-road, and that's the case here. The LED headlights and grille have been moved up, so there's less chance of them being blocked or damaged. The reprofiled bonnet gives you a clearer view forward when you're inching over challenging terrain, and the square front wings make judging the extremities easier. Plus, the bumper's been reshaped to give you the best possible approach angle for steep slopes. Here we're going to focus on the long wheelbase 5-door body style that almost all buyers in our country choose, although we will point out that farmers and industrial folk who still like the short wheelbase 3-door model can still buy one at the foot of the range. This bigger body style's profile remains much as before, although owners who are familiar with earlier versions of this Mark IV model might notice the larger, more eye-catching 12-spoke machine-finished 19-inch alloys that are fitted to top variants like this one. Otherwise, so the car remains tough, tall and imposing, with few concessions to style, although the distinctive flat-topped wheel arches, the bold sill line and the powerful haunches do catch the eye. At the rear here, the spare wheel hangs temptingly in plain view below the level of the bumper, but at least you do still get a proper one, which is rare enough these days. Further up there, this more prominent number plates around, redesigned rear tail lamp clusters and a restyled bumper. Now, as we've been saying, everything about this car re-emphasises its mission to provide an authentic SUV experience, and that's something you're further reminded of when it's time to take a seat up front. Now, we can't really imagine why you'd have come to this model from a more car-like large SUV, a Discovery, an Audi Q7, a Volvo XC90, something like that. The old-school appeal of this Toyota is, after all, so different. But if you ever did, you would struggle to adjust. I mean, it's not that this Land Cruiser can't be luxurious. This top Invincible version has leather upholstery, powered everything, and even a slightly dubious strip of synthetic wood on the fascia. It's just that the slab-sided, wipe-clean cabin design is from an earlier, simpler SUV era. Of course, you might quite like that. Plenty of loyal Land Cruiser buyers do. At the wheel, as you'd expect, you sit high up in a pleasingly commanding position, and the squishy seats remain as comfortable as your favourite armchair and about as supportive through the bends. Avoid the two lower trim levels and you'll be treated to leather upholstery, 8-way powered adjustment, plus heating and cooled ventilation. Toyota's also made a few efforts to create a more premium feeling ambience, introducing white illumination around the fascia and a classier LED lit cabin lighting scheme. The centre stack now gets smarter silver hairline textured trimming, and soft pads are provided either side of it to cushion the driver and front passenger's knees. Not so good are the dashboard ergonomics that you survey from this elevated perch. The switchgear distribution's always been a bit muddled in previous Land Cruisers, and to be frank, it still is. That's despite the attempts that have been made this time around to tidy things up. Some things are better though. The redesigned controls for the off-road and the suspension settings in the middle of the centre stack are much easier to use, but there are still plenty of switches sort of hidden away by your knees, and the graphics used on the Toyota Touch 2 multimedia screen now seem very dated. This display has grown in size to 8 inches, and in its top, Touch 2 with Go form does most of what you want, with full map navigation, voice activation, a text-to-speak function, SOS emergency call assistance, and access to connected services and apps like AHA. Now, if you happen to remember earlier versions of this 4th generation model, you'll find more evidence of redesign in the instrument binnacle that you view through this large, restyled 4-spoke steering wheel. A 4.2-inch TFT multi-informational display not only provides comprehensive vehicle and infotainment data, but it also offers a wide range of functions which are especially helpful off-road. It briefs you on the vehicle body angle, the traction control operation on each wheel, and the status of the differential locks. Now, this colour monitor is flanked by polished dials that in plusher variants like this one feature Toyota's precision Optitron technology. As for cabin storage, well, the door pockets are small, but the glove box is big. Plus, you get this large bin between the seats, which is refrigerated on this top Invincible variant. 2 silver-lidded cupboards are provided at the bottom of the centre stack. The lower one contains a pair of rather small cup holders. There's also this open compartment here behind the gear stick, which is presumably intended for your phone, because 12-volt USB and aux imports are all nearby. We also like this overhead compartment, which folds out to reveal a rear conversation mirror, which allows parents to monitor kids in the back better, and also gives you somewhere to store your sunglasses. Now, time to take a seat in the second row. Provided you avoid entry-level trim, you'll find side steps to aid entry, and on this top Invincible version, the air suspension can drop the car down 25mm, and that might help older folk to access the cabin a bit more easily. Once inside, you'll find excellent standards of head and knee room, aided by the way that on most models you can recline the seat backs and you can slide the seat base. Now, the latter function delivers between 489 and 618 millimetres of legroom, depending on your final chosen position. In addition, the carriage of 3 adults will be aided by the relatively low centre transmission tunnel. What else? Well, the triple zone climate control system fitted to top models delivers this useful central bank of controls, and you get netted seat back pockets along with this fold down armrest which incorporates twin cup holders. The door bins though, like those up front, are lamentably small. So, time to take a look at the third row seating, which you won't necessarily get on cheaper Land Cruiser variants, although it is mandatory on a plusher derivative like this one. A walk-in function makes access to the very rear much easier. The pull of a single lever simultaneously pulls the seat back forward, now to a much more accommodating 46-degree angle, and slides the seat base out of your way. Unfortunately, this facility is only provided on one side of the car, the near side. Once you get yourself back into this third row, you'll certainly find it better than the kids-only zone offered by most cars of this kind. And if you have second row passengers prepared to help out and slide forward a bit, you'll find that 2 adults could happily cope back here, provided they weren't too tall and the journey wasn't too long. That's also aided by the way that on the high-spec models, you can electrically recline the seats for even greater comfort. Cup holders and a power socket are provided too. So finally, let's examine your luggage capacity options, at which point you'll find yourself dealing with this Land Cruiser's most annoyingly distinctive design cue, this side-opening tailgate. It's a real pest in tight supermarket car parks. Now, true, to compensate, Toyota has provided an opening tailgate glass section, but getting your stuff in through the opening that creates is an awful lot of work because the window line's so high from the ground. Once you do get your stuff inside, you'll find nice little touches like this toolbox stowed in its own purpose-designed tailgate compartment on the left-hand side. There's another compartment just next to it that could take small items that you might want to keep out of sight. As you can see, with the third seating row upright, there's predictably very little luggage space, just 104 litres. Much of the time, though, you're probably not going to be needing these extra boot-mounted chairs, and when they're not needed, you can use electric controls mounted inside the tailgate and behind the near-side second row seats to retract them neatly into the boot floor via Toyota's slick Easy Flat folding mechanism. Even the headrest stows itself automatically, and that'll all be a welcome major selling point for anyone who's broken fingernails or drawn blood battling with rear seat folding mechanisms. Once the third row seating disappears, a 621-litre space is revealed. That's big enough to swallow 4 large suitcases, and it's equipped with tie-down hooks, 220-volt, 100-watt AC power outlet, and on most models, sliding rails on the floor too. You can extend the length of this area by pushing forward the middle bench, which has 125 millimetres of sliding travel. Because that bench has a 40-20-40 split, it's also possible to push through longer items like skis without completely retracting the second row backrest. If that's still not enough, then dropping forward that bench frees up 974 litres of total capacity. Now, that is less than you'll get with most rivals in this configuration, but it's probably as much as most families will actually need. Across the Land Cruiser range, the only engine you can have, well, for our market at least, is a 2.8 litre, 177 HP, 4-cylinder diesel. Even in this top £53,000 Invincible variant, which is the one that you'll see in virtually all the online and magazine articles covering this model line. Most buyers, though, choose the mid-range Active and Icon variants, which sit slightly more affordably in the £40,000 to £48,000 bracket. In all these guises, this Land Cruiser comes only in 5-door form with automatic transmission. With active trim, there is the option of saving around £600 and doing without that third seating row. Otherwise, all 3 variants come with the 7 seats that you'll probably want. To get more choice than that, you've got to go shopping at the entry-level point in the lineup, and that's not very likely if you're a private buyer wanting at least a few creature comforts. Nevertheless, we still need to tell you that with this improved design, perhaps wanting to fill a gap left by the temporary absence from the market of Land Rover's Defender, Toyota has introduced a more basic utility version of this car. Now, this comes with the option of a shorter three-door body style and manual transmission. In fact, at entry-level, just above the £33,000 price point, that's what you have to have. Now, if you're prepared to stick with utility trim, around £35,000 gets you this 5-door body style, only with 5 seats, and for £1,600 more, you can have that same car with an automatic gearbox. Business users can get themselves both body styles in commercial form, that's with blanked out rear windows and utility trim, for a fraction less, and then with reclaimable VAT end up parting with well under £30,000, which might be tempting for the right kind of buyer. It's that kind of package, in fact, that Toyota sells to the UN, and if it's good enough for them. Here, though, we're going to focus on the mainstream Active, Icon and Invincible variants that almost all private purchasers will go shopping for in the £40,000 to £55,000 bracket. Now, that's a value proposition that we need to put into some kind of context. Yes, of course, you can buy a large diesel-powered automatic 7-seat SUV for less. An equivalent Kia Sorento or Skoda Kodiaq, for example, would save you about £10,000. Or you could go for a Hyundai Santa Fe and save about £5,000. None of those SUVs, though, are properly capable off-road, so they're not really relevant rivals. You'd do better on the rough stuff with a SsangYong Rexton, which in base form would save you around £12,000, or a Mitsubishi Shogun, which in base form would save you about £6,000. But in neither case is the quality or model heritage quite the same. There's a reason why so many people shopping in this segment find the extra money for the Land Rover Discovery. And having mentioned the Discovery, let's tell you that a base-trimmed 4-cylinder diesel version of one of those costs around £6,000 more than an equivalent version of this Toyota. A committed Land Cruiser buyer won't want to pay that. They'll reason that this iconic Japanese model is not only cheaper, but it's also a tougher and more rugged choice. They have a point too. I mean, when was the last time you saw UN peace convoys on the news using Discoveries? That's the kind of trusted toughness you're paying for here. Well, if you're convinced by that, then you're going to want to know what's included as part of the standard spec. And the answer is a very reasonable amount, providing you can afford to stretch beyond basic utility trim. To be fair, though, even here you get roof rails, front fog lights, air conditioning, dusk sensing headlights, cruise control, smart keyless entry with a push-button starter, proper spare wheel and a 6-speaker audio system with a CD player plus Bluetooth, along with aux-in and USB ports. Almost certainly, though, as we referenced earlier, your actual starting point for range perusal is more likely to be the active grade, and that delivers the key basics that most private buyers will want, specifically things like 17-inch alloy wheels, rear parking sensors, dual-zone automatic air conditioning, cruise control, leather steering wheel trim, and the Toyota Touch 2 infotainment system with its 8-inch touchscreen and 9-speaker DAB audio system. Ideally, though, you'd want to stretch a little further to mid-spec Icon level. Now, improvements made to this grade for this revised model have brought larger 19-inch wheels, heating and ventilation for the front seats, and a range of Toyota Safety Sense active safety features that we'll get to in a minute. As with the pre-facelifted Icon model, you also get LED headlights and front fog lights, rear privacy glass, side steps and rain-sensing wipers. Inside, there's leather upholstery, powered adjustment for the steering column and the front seats, triple zone air conditioning, which includes separate adjustment for the rear, clearer Optitron instrumentation and an auto dipping rear view mirror, plus the Toyota Touch 2 with Go package with navigation and enhanced connectivity features. Practical Icon spec touches include split folding second row seats, a reclining and sliding mechanism for passengers in both the second and third rows, and rails on the load area floor. Here, as we mentioned earlier, we're testing the flagship Invincible variant. Now this, as you'd expect, has all the luxury niceties that you could reasonably want for the money. So you get a 14-speaker JBL Synthesis premium surround sound audio system with Wi-Fi connectivity. Plus there's heated second row seats, a cooled centre console box, memory power adjustment settings for these front chairs, even more safety kit, again we'll get to that in a minute, and the desirable AVS, Adaptive Variable Suspension package. with its magic carpet-style electronically modulated rear air suspension. Plus, at Invincible level, you get a standard what Toyota calls its off-road pack, and that will cost you around £2,800 on the lesser Icon variant, and it's not offered at all further down the range. That off-road pack includes a lot, so let's talk you through it. There's the MTS multi-terrain select system, so that via various settings you can adapt the car to the ground you're travelling over. You can then observe your progress via another package inclusion, the multi-terrain monitor surround view camera system, and keep an eye on the amount of lock you've put on through the turns via a steering angle display. To help ease you out of really sticky situations, the package also includes a crawl control feature along with a rear differential lock. And you also get a body angle monitoring feature, puddle lamps with reverse tilting door mirrors, and the KDSS, that's Kinetic Dynamic Suspension System, that makes off-road driving more comfortable and on tarmac limits body roll in the bends. Do you really need all this extra kit for almost unstoppable off-road prowess? Well, probably not. Even lower-level Land Cruisers come with everything you'd require to make it further off-piste than just about any other SUV you could name. A low-range gearbox is, of course, built into the permanent four-wheel drive system. Plus, there's a centre Torsen limited-slip differential, a centre differential lock, plus HAC, hill start assist control, and DAC, downhill assist control. Now, those HAC and DAC features are replaced by the crawl control system I just mentioned if you're able to get yourself a Land Cruiser fitted with that off-road pack I was just talking about. So, on to options. There aren't many. You'll probably find yourself paying extra for metallic paint. We've got Phantom Blue here, and Toyota offers a few pricier pearlescent paint shades too. You're probably going to want a towing hitch. Fixed, detachable and flanged units are all available. Go for one of those and you won't be able to specify the optional style pack. That includes black 19-inch alloy wheels, chrome door mirror covers, rear chrome trim and a rear underrun. There is also a protection pack which features a boot liner, side mouldings and rear bumper protection, and that can be fitted to all the 5-door models. With Icon trim, you can also pay extra for the 14-speaker JBL Synthesis sound system if you want that. On to safety stuff. As well as Isofix child seat fastenings, anti-whiplash front head restraints and a pedestrian-friendly bonnet, there are twin front, side and curtain airbags plus the driver's knee bag. To avoid the need for those, buyers get a full roster of advanced electronic aids including ATRC, active traction control, VSC, vehicle stability control and a multi-terrain ABS system. There's also tyre pressure monitoring, trailer sway control for towers, and providing you have the Toyota Touch 2 with Go package including sat-nav, there's also SOS emergency call assistance, which will automatically alert the emergency services in the event of an accident. One of the key changes made to this revised model, though, has been the inclusion of a lot more camera-driven safety kit, courtesy of the Toyota Safety Sense package that's fitted to the top Icon and Invincible models. Now, unfortunately, this can't be specified as an option further down the range. Safety Sense gives you 6 key features, so let's talk you through them. As you'd expect in this day and age, one of these is an autonomous braking system. Now, Toyota calls theirs a pre-collision system, and it's one of those ones that scans the road ahead as you drive in search of potential collision hazards. If one's detected, you'll be warned. If you don't respond, or perhaps you aren't able to, then the brakes will automatically be applied to decrease the severity of any resulting accident. Now, this setup is also able to specifically identify people using a millimetre wave radar sensor, and it'll apply braking if a pedestrian is detected in front of the Land Cruiser at speeds above 3 miles an hour. The other 5 safety sense features can be quickly covered. Lane departure alert warns dozy drivers who've drifted out of their lane on the highway. Sway warning sounds an alert and displays a warning if steering input, lane positioning and vehicle sway suggest driver fatigue. Automatic high beam automatically dips your headlights at night. Adaptive cruise control, well, that automatically keeps you a safe distance behind the car in front on the highway. And road sign assist pictures road signs on the move and then displays them on the dash. Now, if you want to go further, the off-road pack, which, as we've said, is optional on the Icon model and standard on this top Invincible variant, will give you 2 further features. A blind spot monitor works on the move to stop you from dangerously pulling out to overtake in front of another car, and a rear cross traffic alert feature stops you from dangerously reversing out of a parking space into the flow of traffic. Nobody is going to purchase a Toyota Land Cruiser expecting miracles on the running costs front, so it's conceivable that this vehicle's 38.1 mpg combined cycle fuel economy and 194 grams per kilometre emissions showing might even be a little better than you may have expected. The four-cylinder diesel engine's change in size from 3 litres to 2.8 litres in 2015 certainly improved things in this regard. Now, the efficiency figures I just quoted refer to manual and automatic versions of this 5-door body style. That's the one that almost all customers choose. In the unlikely event that you were looking at the 3-door model, then the readings rise slightly to 39.2 mpg and 190 grams per kilometre. Either way, this kind of showing is inevitably way off what you get from cheaper but less rugged rivals like Kia Sorento and Hyundai Santa Fe. The gap to a more credible rival like Land Rover's Discovery is less huge, but still significant. A 4-cylinder diesel Disco manages 43.5 mpg and 171 grams per kilometre. To be fair to Toyota, though, other comparably tough competitors like Mitsubishi's Shogun and SsangYong's Rexton deliver figures at or about this Land Cruiser's level. As with most competitors, you're unlikely to be able to match the quoted figures in ordinary day-to-day motoring, but you can keep an eye on your efforts towards frugality via a graphical display in the trip information part of the car area of the Toyota Touch 2 infotainment screen. Now, to maximise opportunities here, you'll want to drive as often as possible with the Drive Mode Select system in its Eco mode. Here, the engine output and the throttle openings are automatically modulated to optimise fuel efficiency, and the air conditioning system's output is tweaked. The CO2 showing means, of course, that this car will be expensive to tax, but at least residual values are and will stay very strong. Industry experts predict that you'll get 49.37% of your original purchase price back after the usual 3-year, 60,000 mile standard ownership period. That's thanks to the relatively low numbers sold, this car's bulletproof quality and its loyal following. Insurance groups are pitched at 35 for utility and active spec models, Group 33 for the Icon variant, and Group 34 for this invincible derivative. As before, maintenance costs can be kept down thanks to a fixed price servicing plan, and there's a 5-year, 100,000 mile warranty, which compares very favourably with the 3-year, 60,000 mile cover, which is offered by most rivals. Better still, if ownership history of cars from this model line is anything to go by, you'll almost certainly never need it. The Land Cruiser reminds you what an SUV used to be. And if you want one, you'll be one of those people who believe that this kind of car is what those letters ought to stand for. It'll never let you down, and it'll very comfortably get you and up to 6 passengers wherever you want to go, be your destination Kensington or Kenya. Such has always been the appeal of this Toyota. But is that appeal broad enough? In recent times, Toyota has tried to widen it by developing the Land Cruiser into a vehicle that can now blend a little more comfort with its capability, yet still one that's eminently suited to the many third world users who wouldn't be seen dead driving anything else. Don't get us wrong, if your ownership objectives lie purely in tarmac territory, there are many better large SUVs you could choose. But if you want to combine paid service use with occasional visits to the wilderness, or if you just like the thought of being able to do so, it's hard to think of any other vehicle that we'd prefer over this one. You just need to be able to justify it. As part of that process, the updates that we've been looking at here, the smarter styling, the upgraded safety, the relatively spacious third-row seating layout will all certainly help. Of course, as with previous Land Cruiser models, you could criticise this one's slothful performance or its ferry-like cornering demeanour, but as usual, that would be to miss the point. Why would you ever want to drive this car in a manner that would cause you to notice either of those things? Perhaps it's a little more relevant to point out that running costs are still enough to significantly drag down Toyota's model range efficiency average. How long that'll be sustainable for the brand is anyone's guess. Whatever happens, we can't imagine the company ever applying compromised crossover principles to Land Cruiser design, which means it'll always be a precision tool for an imprecise environment, and an SUV that can go anywhere, not just in terms of its 4x4 ability, but also in terms of its wonderful classless image. It's no more out of place halfway up the King's Road than it would be halfway up Kilimanjaro. And as an ultimately capable long-term ownership proposition, there really isn't much that can beat it.